Hi, good morning. It's David Rizzo with Rogers Gardens, and today we're going to do July in the garden. So it's a checklist of what you should be doing in the garden this time of year. And as we go more into summer, it's more, I'm going to take my sunglasses off. I don't know if you can see me. It's more a checklist or more of a maintenance list. And so we're going through, and we are planting a lot of stuff too. But mainly it's sort of a maintenance month where you're getting ready, you're harvesting, you might be watering a little bit more and mulching. So you're just getting ready for the hot weather, because now as we get warmer, June gloom is gone. So now we could be hitting in the high 70s, mid 80s, and some inland areas can be as high as 90, 95, 100. So I'm gonna go over a little bit of that, and save your questions for last. So we're gonna go through some of the annuals you'll be planting this time of year, and then the perennials that I like, a lot of the herbs and the veggies to plant right now, some of the shade plants, some of the drought tolerant. I like the drought tolerant perennials. I'll talk fertilizers. Then we'll go into the bigger stuff below, like the tropicals. And so let's get going first. So right now, the annuals that you're planting for the heat and for summer, and some perennials too. So you're going to be doing like Coreopsis are a good one to plant right now for summer. They really are more of a perennial, but sometimes people treat them as an annual. You got the flowering Nicotina, tobacco. You have the echinaceas that you're planting right now. I don't know if I grabbed some of the other stuff. Here we go. So zinnias, you're putting in zinnias right now. Zinnias are good. And with petunias, the more bush petunias are going to have a harder time through the heat. What I do is I like the trailing petunias more. So this time of year I do switch into more of the trailers, because the trailing petunias will take more heat. So that's important. More trailing petunias, more almost perennial, but I don't want to go too far off path, because that's more with the perennial stuff. So let's go back to the annuals. And so you're doing vincas one, zinnias are another one. Lisianthus are going to start coming in. So your Texas bluebells, this one is Echo Blue. So this is a good summer blooming annual. And so we're going to start getting these. I like to get them in the color packs. And so when I take them out of the pack, I like to plant them pretty close. You know, sometimes I'll put them about 6 inches apart. And with Lisianthus, if they get too tall, stake them. So that's one with the summer annuals, and keep them really well watered. And deadheading. I'm going to go through with the watering more to the end on what I use and what nozzles I use, but I'm still with the annuals. Definitely water them in good, get them root establishment, and start planting, because you're switching over to those heat lovers. So I still do a little bit of marigolds, but mainly it's the heat lovers. It's zinnias, it's lisianthus, it's vinca, all those heat lovers. So that's with the annuals. Now we can go into the perennials, and the perennials, I'll talk about sun perennials, I'll talk about some of the shade stuff too, but I like the summer snapdragons, angelonias. This is a good one for sun. This is more, we treat it as an annual, but it is a short-lived perennial. Your Coreopsis, like this is upstick red, really good little perennial. You get into one of my favorites. I love this plant. I used to grow it in the desert. It's called Agastache. This will take heat. I used to grow this one in Las Vegas. So this is a good hummingbird plant, and the Coreopsis is a good butterfly plant and a bee plant. So butterflies, bees, more of an open flower, and then more of a long tubular flower is your Agastache. Another good one for the hummingbirds is your Kufia, your cigar plant. Kufia, the little cigar plant's a good one. I love the nasturtiums. This is called black velvet. It's a really deep, like sort of a burnt orange. That's a good one for heat. More of a ground cover trailer. And one thing you have to watch with nasturtiums is they can really take over a little bit in seed. So sometimes it's good to cut them back and watch them so they don't reseed themselves all over. I really do like the perennial gomphrenias. We're starting to get gomphrenias in. This is called cut flower orange. And then there's a pink one. This is the carmine, which is like a deeper pink. Good for heat, good rebloomer, great for summer. One of my favorite perennials for a lot of sun is the moonshine yarrow, Achillea. This is great for the butterflies too, and this gets taller like 2 to 3 feet. So that one I love using. You even have some of the other trailing plants too, like this is a type of scabiola. These are great for summer. They love the heat, but they just need a good amount of water, so good soakings. And with this one, I do like to mulch it because it can need a little extra water to get going. And the sand verbenas are really good too. The little sand verbenas, they're really tough. They can take a lot of heat. This one can go into the hundreds too. This could be an interior or inland variety. And what else do we have? Oh yeah, and then you have more of the trailing petunias. Another thing with the trailing petunias, I will tell you you got to really watch for. See the flowers getting eaten. They get tobacco budworms or tobacco budworms, and this is the same worm that goes after what I'm thinking of, the petunias and the geraniums. So this one goes after the geraniums too. So it can really strip the flowers. So there's an organic. Let's see where I put the. Where did I do with it? Oh, here it is right here. So I like using spinosad. Spinosad is a good one for the caterpillars, the tobacco budworms, because they'll really chew up the flowers on the petunias and the geraniums. So what I do is get the concentrate, put about a tablespoon in a spray bottle, shake it up, use it in the evening, and use it all up, because this is a bacterial disease. Once it's mixed, it doesn't last long. Very good for caterpillars. So I'll talk more about that when we get to the other stuff. So that's the petunias. More perennials. This is a good penstemon. Love using this. This is Margarita Boff or Hedophylla. Good variety. See what happens. I will show you guys something with perennials and with anything. See how this is real lanky and it's just falling all over the place? Even though it has a lot of flowers on it, if I plant this, I want it to fill out, so I'll just go through and I'll cut it all the way across. I'll just take my pruners and I'll cut it, and I still got some new ones coming because I want this to fill out really more, because sometimes when they come out of the nurseries, if they fed them really heavy and they're real wimpy and they're weak, you want to trim that back and get them to flush out and become a stronger plant when you plant them. So that's with the penstemon. You got some really good of the salvias, more salvias, the little greggii, autumn sage. This will take really hot too, into the hundreds, really hot weather. Now I want to shift gears, and so with the perennials, again, you just want to make sure you soak them in good. You feed them a little lightly when you plant them, and you can mulch them too. If you're in an area that's 85, 90, 95, what I'll always do is I'll plant them first, I'll let them go for about 2 weeks, and then I'll mulch them. And so we'll talk about mulch in a minute. And I brought out some more of the shade plants I like. So let me grab a couple of them. So I have a white New Guinea impatient. Sometimes they call these sun impatiens, and they're really not. They'll handle morning sun with a lot of afternoon shade, and they'll tolerate heavy shade. The white flower, if you put it in shade, actually reflects light. So that's a cool one to do in gardens if it's under a tree, if you get 2 to 3 hours of morning sun. So New Guinea impatiens are really good. Here's a variegated one that gets a pink flower. I love coleus. So coleus are my favorite. I love coleus. And one of my favorite coleus is this large leaf variety. They call it Kong. This is a new one called Green Halo. So Kong Junior Green Halo. I love the green. So this is an annual we would use in shade, like a foliage plant for shade, and it's a really good plant, but you got to watch it for the snails and slugs a little bit. If you get them really bad, take one of the organic slug baits called Sluggo. Sluggo is a really good one you'd sprinkle around them. And here's another Kong coleus that I like. So good foliage. Another good plant that I use a lot for the shade, I love these non-stop begonias. These little non-stops. These are in the tuberous begonia family, but they don't get tall. They stay short, but they really rebloom good. So they're just starting to come in. And you got to watch the water on these a little bit. You don't want to keep them overly wet because they hold so much water in the trunk, they'll rot out. So be careful with these, but the non-stops are really good. Another one that I really like, it's in the bellflower family called Campania. This is Campania muralis or Dalmatian bellflower. This is a little perennial ground cover for shade. So this is a good one. They tend to bloom late spring, early summer. So Dalmatian bellflowers are good to put in right now too. They like a lot of shade though, not a lot of sun. I even brought up some other little like ornamental grasses we're starting to get, like some of the Carex glaucas, and this is a blue zinger. This is a good one that I like, but for the finishing up for the shade. So that was the shade plants. So just make sure they get watered in. Make sure they're not in too much sun, too much heat. So that's with all of those, the shade flowers right there. Now I'm going to go into more herbs, vegetables, and then I'll go back into more drought tolerant, bigger perennials. And so now you can still, with herbs, you can still plant your lavenders. Your lavenders are still good to plant right now, so heat lovers. Full sun, moderate water. Another thing that I do is see when these flowers are almost done. I love my pruners. Almost dropped them. These are Felco pruners, and what are they? They're Felco number 310s. So what I do when they're finishing out, see how the white on here is looking more like drier and it's not that vibrant color? I'll clip them right across the top. And the reason why I'm doing that, even on these little plants, is I want them to fill out. So I know they'll bloom in another 3 to 4 weeks. And so once those flowers are done, give them a little haircut, and then you'll see the new growth will shoot right out of there. And I want this to flush more. So what happens with lavender is they get really lanky and they get tall. So even when they're little, every couple months, just give them a haircut, and then you'll get a fuller, healthier plant, and you won't get such a tall, leggy plant. So that's with lavenders. You should be planting parsley right now. Parsley's a good one right now to plant. This is the Italian. This is my favorite. This is the Italian giant. So this is your flat Italian parsley, but this is the tall one, and this is a good one for cooking. I love using that one for cooking. You got your basils, and I brought up some of my basils that I grow at home that actually we sell at Rogers. That was a good little plug. So with basil, the sweet basils, keep planting them, but when they start getting tall and they're getting leggy, take your fingers and pinch that tip out. Pinch that tip, because you want them to fill out more. Then I'll take and I'll use this for my pesto. And so I love to make pesto. I'll go to the market and I'll get pine nuts and toast pine nuts and put them in the blender and make fresh pesto. Love fresh pesto. Here's spicy globe basil. See, this can flower and it's not really going to hurt the plant, but the one thing you got to watch with the globe basils, they can get downy mildew really easy. So I'm not planting as much of these as I used to. You got French tarragon. Like, oh no, that's not tarragon, that's penstemon. But French tarragon you can plant right now. The dill, the fern leaf dill is really good to put in right now. More parsley, more like, and so that's pretty much for the herbs. But you can do all the, one thing you'll find that when you're going into summer, you're doing more of the perennial herbs. You can still do dill and you can still do cilantro, but they're going to be much shorter lived in the summer because they don't like the heat. So that's one thing with cilantro. Sometimes I'll plant the seeds of a variety called Leisure and let it grow up a little bit and start cutting it because they want to bolt. Whenever the temperatures are higher than 75, 80, cilantro might last you maybe a month and a half. So that's why it bolts so quick. It doesn't like the hot weather. So that's why I plant it. And the same thing with dill. If you clip it about 3 times and it dies, just take it out and plant new, or try to put it in a little bit of shade so it doesn't have so much heat. And that's with the herbs. Another herb that I really like, even though it can get big, your lemon verbena. I love putting this in green tea. So lemon verbena is coming in. That's a good one. And I always talk about this because it's one of my favorite herbs. We use it for the bees. The bees love this for the pollen. This is African blue basil. This is more of a perennial basil that gets about 3 to 4 feet. We don't use it as much in culinary and cooking, but it's just great for the bees because the bees will come in and they'll help pollinate all your vegetables, especially like your cucumbers, your watermelons, your zucchinis, your pumpkins. So this really does help in the garden. So definitely put in your African blue basil in right now. That's a good one to do for, and that's for the herbs. Water them in good. Sometimes when you do water, I always like to follow that pattern where when I plant, I'll water on a Monday really good. I'll check them on Wednesday. If they're still wet, I'll wait till Friday. If they're dry, I'll water. So I always try that little pattern because I don't really like to water every day. I mean, unless you're into the farther inland areas and you get into 100, you might have to water every day. But near the coast, you can always rot stuff out really easy. So try not to water every day. Try to soak better, let them dry out a little bit. If you have them in the ground, mulch them. And so that's it with herbs. So veggies, so now's a big time to put in all your zucchinis and your watermelons and your squash. This is a really cool one that I haven't had in a while. This is lemon cucumbers, and lemon cucumbers are an old heirloom, and they're really sweet, but when you do harvest them, you have to take a paring knife and peel off the outer skin. But lemon cucumbers are really good. You have the balls zucchini. So right now you want to do any of your pumpkins, your watermelons, all your zucchinis, like your butternuts. And I didn't bring any seeds up, but you can direct sow them right in the garden right now. You don't have to start them in containers. So you can direct sow them. Even corn you can direct sow right now. Tomatillos you can still plant. Like the giant tomatillos, I'm going to probably plant some tomorrow. It's a giant variety called Cisneros, so I'll plant those. Your peppers, you could still keep on going with your peppers. These are jalapenos. You can still do those. And then shishitos, I'm still planting shishitos. You know, they love the heat. Peppers love the heat. Just give them enough water. And about tomatoes, you can still plant tomatoes right now, but the only pitfall is you're not doing any late heirlooms. So if you put any tomatoes in right now, you're doing early varieties that are quick. This is a sun gold cherry. This will produce in like 60 days. So fast varieties. I'm not doing any of those 85, 90-day varieties. That's in spring. That's usually mid-April, mid-May. I want to get those in. But any of those really late varieties, plant them early, because if you plant them right now, you're going to go into like fall, and then it's going to be cooler nights and they're not going to set. So any of the varieties you put in right now early, and that can really take off and produce before we cool down at night in late September, early October. So, and even with going in with tomatoes, because I know I got a lot of questions, tomatoes, they'll start showing the fungal diseases of summer, like the wilts, like verticillium wilt, fusarium wilt. So if you see a lot of brown branches, I just break them off, make sure it gets watered, and there's really not much you can do about it. It's a fungus. Well, it's a fungus that the plant actually takes up, and it's hard to control. But I clean those leaves off and just keep the plant growing. And as they get close to ripening, when you go up to see if they're ripening, tomatoes will change their color from lighter green to red to a deeper red. Do the pressure test. Squeeze them a little bit. I should have brought in some of my tomatoes, but they're not quite ready yet. But a lot of you guys at home, if you planted about in Tomato Mania in March and even like late February, early March, you're going to get a lot of setting right now. But another trick that I do a lot when they're starting to get ready to ripen, back the water way off. Don't keep on watering them really heavy. Sometimes I'll back off to barely once a week, because I want all those sugars to conjugate and make sure that the fruit's not really watery. So that, and you'll have a better shelf life with the fruit. So that's another thing. When you're getting close to ripening and you know they're really close, back that water off so they're not really wet. So early varieties with tomatoes, get them planting, get them all in the ground, all the herbs. Now we're going to go on to, let's go into, I'm going to go into the perennial, just a little bit about some of the milkweed. I'll talk about roses and fruit trees, and then we'll be done, okay? And so now is a good time. Still plant your not tropical milkweed. I mean, no, this is the native milkweed. So now is the time to plant your native milkweeds. These are your Asclepias fascicularis. So this is one we use a lot for the monarchs. Monarchs sometimes will hide down in the plant during the heat of the day. Plant a couple of these pretty close, because they will move from plant to plant. So that is your narrow leaf milkweed. So put them in the garden right now. Not too bad with the watering. Don't keep them that wet. You know, sometimes I'll water them once a week, maybe twice if they're new. So not too much water on them. You want to overwater them. You can, like, these are just more like the sun perennials I was talking about earlier. So those are the sun. There's another native that's actually pretty good. That's Lewisias, and Lewisias, they want a lot of heat. So that's really good for planting all the heat lovers. I'm actually going to skip a little bit, and I'm going to talk a little bit about fruit trees and some of the fruit trees we're planting right now. And then I'll go Plumerias, roses, and tropicals, and then we'll finish out for the questions. So right now, you're looking at planting all of your citrus and your avocados. So I brought up a couple avocado varieties. The one thing to remember when you get into your bigger avocados, If you buy a Haas avocado needs another pollinator, so we usually use Forte. If you buy a Forte, you should have a Haas. Now, some of the smaller varieties are pretty much self-fertile. So when you get into like Lamb Haas and Carmen Haas, usually they're pretty self-fertile and they're dwarfs, and so you don't have to have another one to pollinate it. So that's important if you don't have that big of a garden. So that's one thing to remember with avocados. And like another thing that I'll bring up, same thing with citrus. I always feed. I feed these pretty heavy. I'll feed them about every 2 months. And I actually will feed the avocados with citrus food. So citrus and avocados need high trace minerals. And so even though this is my 6-3-3, 6 nitrogen, 3 phosphorus, and 3 potassium, another thing that I really want out of these for what I'm feeding is I want the iron, I want the zinc, and the magnesium. So that's important for a lot of your tropical or subtropicals like this. They need those minerals. Like even with peaches, plums, nectarines, they don't need any minerals, so you're just going to use a basic all-purpose vegetable food. This is what I use on all my tomatoes, peppers, peaches, plums, nectarines, apples. So I don't need anything special, but you do want this for your avocados and for your citrus, especially this time of year. And so I brought up a couple of citrus. We are getting in, we're getting in kumquats. So this is a really good kumquat called Nagami. So Nagami is really good. I might have to move over here so you can see me. And so Nagamis are really good after longer. We finally got another good shipment of Meyer lemons. So Meyer lemons. So watch for us, because now is the time of year. All these hot weather and these heat lovers, they want to be planted now. And when you're watering them, it's better to soak them really good. Let them gradually dry out. Soak them really good. Don't keep them constantly wet, because then the leaves will turn yellow. Citrus are known, they hate to be watered every day. So water them good, let them dry out for a few days. Sometimes with me, I might water even like once a week right now. And even longer if it's an older citrus. I might be watering every 10 days, 15 days right now. But once we get hotter, I do up it to about once a week. And if we get really hotter, I might go twice a week, but I usually don't go more than once, maybe twice a week. And that's it. And so that's with all the tropicals. And you can start doing, I don't know where I put it. Oh, it's right here. So your passion fruit too. Your passion fruit are good to plant right now. I brought a really good variety out called Frederick. So your passion fruit are good right now. They're gonna start fruiting as we go into summer. So put those in right now. And another thing that I always like to talk about with blueberries. See, this blueberry is really like it's almost like bright yellow. See how yellow the leaves are? It should be more of a bluish gray. Reason why it's turning this color is the pH is getting too high for it. These are acid-loving plants. So one of the fertilizers that I recommend a lot is you'll use cottonseed meal on them. That will get them more of a gray bluish color, and it's at the pH they like. Our water is alkaline enough where it's going to bring the pH up. This will help bring the pH down. So this really works good. So cottonseed meal, this is 621. That's a good one for that. And so water them good. And but if your blueberries are turning yellow, give them a little coffee grounds and bring that pH back down. Use cottonseed meal or coffee grounds, okay? And what else we want to talk about next? I remember like not that much into the other fruit trees. With the avocados, watch them for persei mites. If persei mites get really bad, I'll use like a light oil spray on them, like a takedown. Another thing, as we go into hotter weather and we're getting hotter, don't spray even the organics. Don't spray them during the heat of the day. Like I won't spray anything right now. I'll wait until we cool off in the evening to use the light oil sprays. My favorite is by Monterey Garden Products, and it's called Takedown. If the persei mites start really going after your avocados. So that's with those. I'm gonna bring the cart. Let's see if I can bring it. Well, you know what? I'm just gonna park it right here, and then I'll bring it around. Now's the time to do Plumerias. So now we're starting to get in all our Plumerias. So we got in some really nice ones. This is a little miniature variety called Mystique, and they actually have their flower spikes on them. These will stay pretty small, maybe about 4 to 5, maybe 6 at the most. So these are looking really good. With Plumerias, you always want to make sure that they're in a lot of sun and they don't get too much water. You don't want them too wet. The trunks always will rot out. Like, see, they hold a lot of water in their trunk. And if you take cuttings, you can take a cutting off them, but you got to let that cutting heal, callus, before you plant it, or it will rot. So that's the biggest thing with Plumerias I see a lot of people do is they overwater them. So treat them like a cactus or a succulent. Don't water them that much. You have to water them every 2-3 weeks. When they're little like this, I might go about every 7 to 10 days. Give them a good soaking. And fertilizing with them, the soluble high phosphorus fertilizers. This is Growmore Seagrow 42626. So this is a good one. It usually has a little scooper in here, like one little scooper. So one of these scoops I'll put into 2-gallon watering can and let it dissolve and then water in good. But you always want to shake it up really good before you water it in. Sometimes I'll put about 1 inch of water in the bottom and I'll throw this in and let it dissolve for about 10 minutes. I'll put a little bit more water, shake it up, a little bit more water, shake it up, and then you can water this in. I mean, I don't go really frequent with this. If I use it, I'll use it about once a month or about every 6 to 8 weeks. Some people get carried away and they use it about every 2 to 3 weeks, and then it's just too much fertilizer. So with fertilizers too, you want to feed consistently but not over fertilize. I know some people get a little crazy with overfeeding. Another good one to use is I love the tea bags by Malibu. These are just, I just got some in my eyes. These are just, you steep them in a 5-gallon bucket of water and you take your watering can, water it in good. But I like this because this is just Malibu compost in a tea bag. So this works really good for being more of an organic, but a lot of good nutrients, because Malibu compost has a lot of good nutrients in that compost. Another thing that we're starting to carry again that I know a lot of people ask for, the old siphonexes. So what this is, if you make your own fertilizer or compost tea, you take your hose bib off and put this before on your hose bib, and then you put your hose after, and you put this little tube in the 5-gallon bucket, and then when you water, it draws this out of the bucket, and you can fertilize your yard with it. So really easy to fertilize. The old siphonexes are really good to use, so that's a good one. We're gonna talk a little bit more about. Let's go talk about mulch really quick. So mulching is really important right now, and then I'll go into some of the other flowers. Mulching, watering, and then we'll be done. Mulching is very important right now because we're going into the heat. I always mulch. I'm in a hotter area. I'm down on the border of Santa Ana and Tustin, and we'll start getting into the 90s, high 80s, 90s. So your shredded cedar bark, your shredded redwood bark are really good. I always put down about 1 inch of mulch. Keep it away from the trunks a little bit on your roses, on anything that you mulch. And then water really good to get the water through it. You can also use the fine chipped bark. I didn't bring any of them up, but the fine chipped bark, the little mini mulch, is a really good one also that you can mulch right now. But especially if you are farther inland and you're getting hotter, you want to mulch right now. On the coast, if we're still in the 70s, I don't mulch as much, but I mulch roses. I even mulch my vegetable garden. Like, I'll start mulching my tomatoes with probably alfalfa straw or Timothy grass straw. The two things I want out of the mulch, I want it to cool down the soil and retain the water. So that's very important as we get hotter. So very, very important. So put your mulches down, your shredded cedar, your mini mulch, your chipped, your medium redwood, all of them. And they'll always say, oh, it's going to draw a lot of nitrogen out of your soil. It's going to, don't mulch too much because it's going to take all your nitrogen. It will a little bit as it breaks down, but if you just fertilize, like even with roses or vegetables, I might light feed my roses before I start mulching. If you keep your garden high in nutrients, you won't have to worry about that. So if you're mulching with the Malibu compost, or you're putting a little bit of the worm castings down, the mulch is not going to really offset it that much. But I think what I always see, people will read something or somebody will tell them something, and then that's all they'll believe. But you got to really go out of the box and just feed your garden, maintain it, and then that way you won't have any problems later on down the road. So that's with mulch. With watering, there's a lot of different watering techniques that we use. These timers actually work really good if you don't want to waste water. If you like to put the hose around your fruit trees and let it soak, These you can set it for like 15-30 minutes, and then once it clicks off, it shuts the water off. I wouldn't leave these on all night though, only when you're supervising them. And the little watering wands work good. I like the watering wands. Dram makes some of the best watering wands. I like the open nozzles. These are good. One of my favorites though, and I'll show you. Let's see what I do with the other thing. I don't know what I do with the other one. But one of my other favorites is, I love the shower heads. These are really good. I put them on a shut-off. The newer soaker hoses have been really good. One of the girls that works here has been using them. These are the flat soakers. These are nylon, so they're not like recycled tires. Some of the recycled tires, they can clog and split. So these new nylon ones are really good. So that's with the watering tools and that. Roses. Let's talk a little bit about roses. So roses, this is one of my favorite varieties. Let's see, I'm going to take some stuff off the table so I can set it up on the table. But this is one of my favorite hybrid teas. This is a variety called Neil Diamond. I love this rose. This rose is so fragrant. So roses, keep fertilizing them this time of year. You know, I'm using the rose flower food. Now, what I'll do differently with feeding this time of year, I always will do this in early spring and in summer. I'll add a little extra Epsom salts. Even though this has magnesium in it, I'll still add a little extra because I really want the magnesium, which is an important mineral for these roses. And then I will mulch them. You know, I'll go through and I'll mulch them, but leave a little distance away from the trunk. And then trimming them. A lot of people ask me, when the flower's done, like let's turn the rose to this, because this flower's done. When I trim this off, I go down into here where I'm going to have 5 leaves coming out. And the reason why I trim it back farther, if I was to just trim up here, it becomes a weaker point and the roses always want to fall over. So that's one thing when you are pruning, you always go about 4 sets of leaves down to where you have a 5-leaf branch, because that's going to help the branches be stronger and a little bit stronger to hold the weight of that flower. And they'll come back and really flower pretty quick. I mean, once you cut it in about another 4 to 6 weeks, they'll be blooming again. So that's with roses. Feed them good, trim them good. Another thing you got to watch for going into summer, they get the sawfly larvae. So if you guys see little holes where your leaves are all chewed up, you want to use the if I still have it, let me grab the bottle, and the little bottle, spineless ad. So I get the concentrate, put about a tablespoon in a spray bottle, spray in the evening really good. So I do that with climbers. I do that with bush roses, and I do this about every 3 weeks if they're really bad. So yeah, so that's with the climbers. So with the climbers and with the shrub, you want to watch them for those rose slugs. So that's important. And moving on, how are we looking on time? Are we pretty good on time?
2 minutes.
Okay, so let's finish up really quick and then I'll start answering questions. And so it's good to do your hydrangeas right now. I put some stuff over here, so now is a good time to start planting your hydrangeas. This is called paniculata, so morning sun, afternoon shade, watered regular. So hydrangeas, put them in right now, feed them right now. Your agapanthus, you're going to be planting a lot of the agapanthus right now going into summer. So these will form a clump. They always bloom in late spring, early summer. So this is a darker variety. This looks like storm cloud, one of the dark ones. So planting that right now. Gardenias too. This is one of my favorite gardenias. This is a big grandiflora type, and this is called First Love. Feed them really good. You know, another thing I'll feed them with an acid fertilizer like a cottonseed meal. I might throw in a little citrus food for the minerals too. So that's another thing that people don't talk about. Gardenias actually like minerals, so give them a good amount of minerals. Let's grab like cannas. Canna lilies are good to put in right now. A lot of your tropical stuff's starting to come in from the nursery. We'll get hibiscus probably another 2-3 weeks. Dahlias. Oh, these are great. I love dahlias. Dahlias, this is a bigger variety. With dahlias, when they get really top heavy, I'll take a bamboo stake and I'll lightly tie them because I don't want them breaking that stake. So dahlias are still going all the way into summer, blooming great. And so that's about it for this month's July in the garden, and let's take some questions now.
Okay, so why are my roses burning and head tipping?
Well, a lot of times with roses, if it's the flowers, especially some of the red varieties will do this. In the hotter areas, when the flowers first come out, sometimes the wind and the heat will burn the edges. So like, let me go grab this climbing rose, the crimson sky. You can really see it on this crimson sky. I'm just gonna set it down right here. Look at this crimson sky. Like, see how these are sort of burning? And these are pretty new roses. They're burning from the heat, you know, and some red varieties will do that, and some varieties, what you can do is just make sure you're watering them adequately. Hottest part of the day, you might put an umbrella over them, let them cool down. Because usually it's when we heat spike into the 90s, like 95, and the roses just come out. They're so fresh that the heat just dries out that flower. So, yeah.
Okay, is Sluggo safe for edible gardens?
Yeah.
And what time of day should I be applying it?
They're asking, is Sluggo safe for an edible garden? Yes, I use Sluggo all the time in my vegetable garden. Sluggo is iron phosphate, so it's not methaldehyde based. So you can use it on anything. You can use it in your edibles, you can use it around citrus. So it's not methaldehyde, it's iron based. So iron is toxic to snails and slugs, but iron is not toxic to us, you know, so iron just breaks down and your plants will take up the iron. So yes, you can definitely use that, and it's safe to use. So I use Sluggo and Sluggo Plus if you have more pill bugs and earwig problems.
Okay, one more. What can I use on roses when the leaves have white spots or dust?
Well, that's one thing that I didn't really go into. So when you get into rust, is orange on the back of leaf, but this time of year, if you see any powdery mildew, which will look like white talcum powder on the leaves, I got a spray for that. Let's see. Yeah, so this Rose 3-in-1, this is a good one. So this has sulfur in it. So sulfur is a really good fungicide to control powdery mildew on your roses. And so if it's really bad, I'll spray about once a week. And then if you start seeing rust, like the orange powder, strip off the bottom leaves and spray the canes. But definitely watch. I'll even use this on if your tomatoes get powdery mildew. This has sulfur in it, but don't use sulfur during the heat of the day. Use it in it's cool in the evening. Don't spray during the day. And anything else?
That's good.
Okay, we're done. So this is David Rizzo from Rogers Gardens. Thank you for joining me today. And if you guys have any other questions, come see me, and have a happy 4th of July, and I'll see you guys next month.